What if your next co-op shooter didn't ask you to kill zombies or robots, but instead fix a supernatural fire alarm while floating staplers give your enemies superpowers? Welcome to FBC Firebreak. It's Remedy's first real stab at a fully standalone live service multiplayer game, and I wanted to find out if it was another cult classic or a shallow side quest from a studio bored with their own continued brilliance. You've probably heard by now it's more the latter than the former, but it's not quite that simple, at least I don't think so. So to really find out the answer, I didn't sit down and play the game, I platinumed it. In fact, I was the 6th person in the world to platinum it, and I've put about 25 hours into the game. So here's everything you need to know about Firebreak. Firebreak is a 3-player PvE shooter set a few years after the events of Control. You play as part of the Firebreak Initiative, a tactical cleanup crew sent into the corrupted oldest house to contain threats, with crisis kits, clipboards, and a can-do attitude. Jobs, what Firebreak called missions, are basically bite-sized objectives: extinguish fires, retrieve cursed objects, repair malfunctioning tech throughout the levels, all while neutralizing the hiss corruption throughout. Each job takes around 15 to 20 minutes and is framed more like a procedural hazard cleanup crew. The vibe is quintessentially Remedy, quirky in a way I think only they know how, but immediately beyond that, the cracks start to show. It's Firebreak's moment-to-moment gameplay where we're slowly reminded that while Remedy is a world-class one-of-one single-player developer, this is their first multiplayer experience, and it shows the more and more you engage with the gameplay loops and its systems. For me, the biggest crack in all of Firebreak's design revolves around its crisis kits and loadouts. The 3 kits, Fix, Jump, and Splash, each come with their own signature tool and gadget intended to guide your role on the team, making each other's lives easier with their unique input that they offer throughout. But within just a few hours, you're met with 3 very distinctive problems. The kit you choose, in the end, is entirely personal preference, having little to no impact in any job you choose. When this realization sets in, the vision of Remedy's co-op experience fizzles away in an instant and is replaced with the reality that you're more playing in parallel than together as a team. This is made all the more clearer when you realize no single kit required for any individual job. It is personal preference. The Fix kit, for example, handles repairs quicker than any other kit. The Jump kit handles mobility and electricity to devices quicker than any other kit. And Splash is this sort of pseudo healer helping decontaminate your team from the various environmental hazards that will slow your team down altogether. This all works in theory, a little rock, paper, scissors, but the death nail in kit design here is each kit can ultimately complete tasks designed for the other too quickly. As a mechanic, for example, I can charge up devices in a matter of seconds. I shouldn't be able to do that. I should require the Jump kit, but you never need it. If I get contaminated, you would think I need a Splash kit. Instead, there are tons of showers located throughout the entire map for me to simply resolve that situation. You're never in crisis, never in real need of any particular kit at any moment. A job never ended in failure with me thinking, that would have went so much different. It could have been so much better if we just had a Splash or a Fixer or a Jumper. That never happened. Not once in my 25 hours with the game. I was never made to think about my decisions or my setup or my character. Your loadouts share everything. This is strange in most games. It's especially strange in a game that is supposed to be a co-op experience that is sort of asynchronous play with each other. You have a perk pool of 48 perks that can all be upgraded 3 times, but they are shared across every single kit. Instead of having 3 unique skill trees to create 3 distinct playstyles and create real options, it's all just shared and the same. After it's all said and done, regardless of your crisis kit, you will play every job the same because you have access to the same handful of guns. I think there's 5 or 6 that can each be upgraded 3 times, the same perks, and perhaps to a lesser extent, I find this personally annoying, you might think differently, the same character design. Unlike, say, the finals where you can visibly track light, medium, and heavy at a glance by stature and silhouette, weapons, and gadgets, that isn't really possible here, and I found it overly frustrating having each crisis kit look absolutely identical, one design for every single character. This is the icing on the cake of failure because it makes unlockables and progression in the game feel even less meaningful than they already are, because I never got a chance to feel invested in my character design or what I was actually progressing through. What am I building towards? What am I doing when everything is just so interchangeable and forgotten? Perhaps the worst offending and most impactful, difficulty. The difficulty grading in Firebreak is among the worst I've experienced in the last few years. Within only the first few hours, I was able to carry weak guns barely upgraded with only a few perk slots open without them even being upgraded, and comfortably finish jobs on clearance level 3 on extreme difficulty without anything close to a coordinated team. And we'll get onto that in a second because that's actually a real issue. I was never once overwhelmed, never overran, never needed to take a second look at my loadout to see whether it could be improved or needed to be improved. I never needed to ask a teammate what kit they were running to improve our overall team dynamic to have a different outcome. It never occurred once. I vividly remember the joy Helldivers 2 delivered from its sheer chaos alone. Trying to input codes on the D-pad while the objective is being overrun and my team are crying out for my help and my input as a player, as a valued member of the team. By stark contrast with exactly the same mechanic, Firebreak had me casually inputting code to complete jobs my kit wasn't even designed to handle. Never once in 20 hours was I overrun, frantically trying to shut off a fan, always just casually resolving the issue, one task onto the next, onto the next. At the very least, I thought if we took 2 splash kits and a fix kit maybe into a job requiring electric boosts, we would be punished severely by that choice. But by the time I got 25 hours into the game, this never happened. I was never punished. I was never once made to think I need to change something here. It was just one task onto the next. The enemies don't scale much either. You're rarely forced to revive teammates because even on the harder difficulty and the hardest difficulty, they can simply give up if they're not going to get revived and respawn. And your team can technically run out of lives, but those things just never seem to happen. Threats ultimately always feel more like light annoyances than escalating danger in a crazy universe. Extreme difficulty that I mentioned before, my difficulty of choice for almost the entire experience, simply maximizes XP, and I was attempting to get the world's first platinum. You'd think all of this sounds kind of intense, but in the end, jobs were just a longer checklist. Enemies just as weak as they were at the start, nothing scaled, nothing changed. Like I said, I was never overrun, never felt pressure. Enemies were weak, kits were weak, the loadouts blindly built, never the need for an ounce of optimization or thought from hour 1 to 25. When your hardest challenge can be beaten with starter perks, starter weapons, and no voice chat, you've got a balance problem. And there it is again, by the way, and I've mentioned this ever so slightly throughout, finding its way into every part of the script and every part of the game. Cooperation, or shall I say lack thereof. Firebreak doesn't only not require teamwork, it actively hinders you from engaging in it. Imagine that, a co-op experience that doesn't want you to cooperate. It's a strange choice for a co-op game, let's be honest. There's no voice chat, nothing more than a basic ping system from 2012, no contextual callouts, no text chat even. In most jobs, your team just splits up and tackles objectives solo, coming together once every so often to share a corridor to run down together onto the next set of objectives that you invariably split up to complete. Ultimately, there's a trifecta of failure at play here. Remedy failed to deliver an engaging co-op hook because I never need to engage with my team in a meaningful way. In turn, they can't ramp up the difficulty because the lack of cohesion and design between the crisis kits would make the game too hard. And lastly, they give each player so much individual strength, giving the player less of a reason to engage in co-op play in the first place. And thus the cycle repeats and repeats and repeats. If they were to fix any one of these little intricacies, the entire thing would collapse. All of that said, why is it still installed on my PlayStation? Why am I going to keep playing it after I platinumed it? Why am I going to wait until Remedy come out with their, DLC, and I'm going to play it again with my friend? Because for all of its flaws, Remedy have succeeded in a strange way, perhaps in a way only they know how. Remedy, in their own words, didn't set out to achieve a cash grab on their control universe. If I can find the quote, I'll pop it on the screen. They don't have a predatory battle pass. In fact, they're once again appropriately inspired by Helldivers 2's Warbond system, which I was a big fan of, and I'm sure many people were as well, allowing gameplay to pave the way for progression, regardless of how light it actually is in the game towards the end. In their own words, they don't want you to play the game for hours and hours every night. They don't want it to be an infinite grind. They aren't trying to keep you on a perpetual treadmill having a second job. They don't want to be the people that give you that experience. And the game is free on PlayStation Plus and free on Game Pass. It's a charming, mostly free, occasionally clever multiplayer experience, where its worst crime is actually trying to respect our time as players, something we are not used to in 2025. It has to be said, if Remedy are okay with Firebreak being the occasional gathering spot for mindless camaraderie with friends through jobs that last 20 minutes with somewhat unchallenging, well, very unchallenging gameplay, then I think I'm okay giving them some time in the future for the 2 planned expansions, because as I write this and look up to see it playing on my monitor, I don't dislike it. I sure don't regret my time with it. Sure, Firebreak is mildly poorly designed at times, but never broken. Not entirely. By no means bad. It's just a bit thin on content and occasionally lacking in design system polish. All things that are very, very fixable if Remedy want to. As strange as it might sound, it's hard to be annoyed at Remedy for creating a perfectly serviceable 7.5 out of 10 multiplayer game that gave me 20 to 25 hours of fun with friends. Engaging multiplayer experiences aren't their core competency. They never promised something life-altering either. In fact, they did the opposite. In a way, they delivered exactly what they said they were going to do. A fun game to give you a few hours to play through with some friends, never to be your second job, like so many other games try to be. So there it is. Both me and Remedy are finished with Firebreak to some extent or another. I'm going to go back to my other games, and they're going to go back to Max Payne and Control 2, while I'm sure a small team add to this game and fix some of those unpolished systems, while adding to the limited content that's available. I hope Remedy enjoyed this momentary detour from single-player greatness to multiplayer curiosity. It might not sound it, but this is actually a recommendation for FBC Firebreak, because for all of its flaws, the things they need to fix and add to, they respected my time, and these days, I think that is so important. They built and delivered exactly what they said they were going to do. I'm not going to hold them to unreasonable standards from other studios. So go play Firebreak for a few hours with some friends and have some dumb fun that they wanted you to have. That's all they wanted, and for that, I think it achieves it.